Hi friends! Imagine a painter about to begin a new piece, but instead of stretching the canvas onto a frame first, he just starts painting straight onto the loose fabric. What kind of result you think he'll get? Sounds absurd. And yet that's exactly what many pianists do when they start learning a piece without thinking about the fingering first. Right fingering does wonders. Pieces are learned faster and stay in your memory more reliably. Technical passages work almost immediately, and your hands stop fighting the music. Over years of teaching and performing, I've gathered a few ideas about fingering that you will rarely hear anywhere on YouTube. And today I want to share them with you, so you can start thinking it through on your own. So here is the structure we will follow. But first, look at your hand for a moment. Which finger raises the most questions when it comes to fingering? The thumb, of course. It's shorter than the others, it sits lower, and most fingering decisions revolve around it. The first half of this video will be about the thumb, and we will look at three things. When it truly belongs to a black keys, so you stop fighting them. How motion of the wrist gives you speed in fast passages, and how your fingering has to work with it, and how thinking in positions lets you get through the passages that always stopped you. If this kind of content resonates with you, like is the kindest way to say thank you. And please subscribe to my channel. We are creating a community of pianists who are serious about piano playing. And there is so much here that will make your practice more effective, more enjoyable, and elevate your piano skills. And now, give me your full attention, because we are beginning the lesson. There are plenty of great fingering tutorials here on YouTube, and many of them mention what's called the Chopin method. At its core, it's about keeping the hand on its natural position on the keyboard. So when you look at your relaxed hand, the fingers are slightly curved, so we try to remain this curve while playing on the piano. And this Chopin method is real legacy, by the way. Chopin left his own notes on technique, but in these tutorials it almost gets reduced to a single rule: never put your thumb on the black key. And it's a very good rule for the white keys, the keys where tonic is a white note. But the moment you step into an advanced repertoire, you meet the other side of the piano, where almost half of the keys are built, the black keys, octaves, chords, whole passages. There, the thumb on the black keys is simply unavoidable. So today, let's get into how to actually play on the black side of the instrument. Here's the real point. The thumb on the black key isn't a mistake. It simply means that your whole hand position is sitting on the black keys, and there's slightly different rules apply. All the other fingers need to sit higher up on the keys, closer to the piano lid, so you don't lose that rounded, natural Chopin-like hand position. For example, let's take a passage from Chopin Fantasia Prop 2. Here you see that positions are changing. So the first position is in white keys. What I mean by that is that the thumb is placed on the white key. So the whole hand position shifts toward it. I play like in the middle of the keyboard. And then the next position is black. The thumb sits on the black key. So my whole hand, fingers number 2, 3, and 5, have to sit closer to piano lid. So basically I play like And then I go to white, black, closer to piano lead. Again closer, the white one. In the middle, black, black. Everything I'm sharing with you today is a part of how I work with my own students. And if you'd like a professional help with your technical challenges, with the difficult places on your repertoire, or with choosing what to play next, I offer private consultations online, so your progress becomes as fast and as effective as possible. You will find the link to apply in the description box below. In fact, the thumb is the one finger you would avoid in just one situation. When the black key comes right after the white one and it sits directly next to it. For example, take this passage from the G minor Rachmaninoff prelude. Here, I would never take the first finger on the B. It takes me a lot of time to do this movement because my whole hand has to go up. And when I can remain the white key position, I would do it. We will talk about thinking in positions just in a moment, but first, let me explain you can't think about fingers apart from the other parts of the hand. When we play, the wrist is always working and it has two main movements, the up and down and the rotation movement. Right now, the rotation interests us the most and it's deeply tied to the thumb. It's actually always starts from the thumb. Why does it matter so much? Because in fast passages, we don't actually get through the notes with the fingers. We throw the hand forward on its own momentum. It's like in bowling, for example. You give the heavy ball the right push. You let go and it rolls towards the target on its own. It's the same here. We launch the hand and the rotation of the wrist carries it forward. But for that momentum to happen, we need to support it with the right fingering. Take this E major arpeggio from the Chopin waltz going up, for instance. I use this particular fingering 1, 2, 3, and then I repeat it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it sets the rotation of the wrist on its own. And again. Basically, I do rotate, rotate, rotate. I don't play just with the fingers. When I isolate the wrist, I would play with the rotation of the wrist. I don't move my fingers so much. If I would use the thumb more often or less often in this case, the rotation would disappear and my speed would go away with it. The trills are rotation too. That's why I prefer to place them not with neighboring fingers, but with fingers one apart. For example, 1, 3 or 2, 4. The rotation then has wider range and the trill comes out more delicate. So basically, with the right fingering, we take the strain from the finger muscles and let the wrist do the work. The wrist has a second movement as well, up and down. And we take it into account for fingering too, because it serves the music. Take, for example, short slurs. They are played with a downward motion of the wrist. And you can't end a short slur on the thumb, an unwanted accent on the end. If I would end the short slur in this case with the thumb, the end of the slur would sound too rude. This is how choice of the fingers serve the composer's musical idea. By the way, would you be interested in a separate video about the motion of the wrist, about rotation, about how the hand movements help the fingers play faster and more freely? Let me know in the comments. If it speaks to you, I'll make it. If you take only one thing away from this video, let it be this. Picture a passage you look at and think, there is no way I'll ever learn this. Well, most of the time it only looks impossible. Look at it the right way and all that tangle of notes falls into just few comfortable hand positions. And then what used to take weeks come together in a matter of days. That's what thinking in positions gives you. Let's look at how it works. So basically, thinking in position means looking at how many notes fit into one single hand position, so I don't have to move my hand. Here is the key thing to understand. When the thumb moves, the whole hand moves with it. The other fingers don't work that way. They have different job. For example, this passage from the Fantasia Prop 2. We have basically here two hand positions. The first one, like that, and the second one, like that. Basically, I move my hand only one time. One more important rule in fast passages, I always test the fingering at fast tempo as well. Slow and fast tempo are two different things, and the fingering that feels comfortable slowly may not work up to speed. Here is another example of thinking in positions, cantilena and legato. In these spots, I check in advance, will the legato work without pedal with the fingering I've chosen? For example, let's take this part from the Rachmaninov C-sharp minor prelude. I would check, so he wrote the upper voice with the quarter note. So he wanted that this voice is also playing legato. So I have to make sure that this E, when I'm holding it, it comes to the D sharp. The D sharp comes to D, and D comes to C sharp. So the fingering in this case, therefore, would be 5, 4, 5, 4. And the other fingers are playing in position. Thinking in positions also helps with left hand accompaniment. For example, take this A minor valse from Frédéric Chopin. The bass is separated from the chord. In fact, the bass and the chords are better taken as a one continuous position. So I would play the bass always with the fifth finger and the chord with fingers 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 when possible. And only if the chord has 4 notes and you can't take it 4, 3, 2, 1, I would use the fifth finger on the chord. Two last principles that applied with real intention will dramatically accelerate your learning process of a new piece. I will admit they sound modest, almost too modest to matter. That impression is exactly what leads many pianists to overlook them. As I mentioned, the first thing I do with the new piece is write in the fingering. Students always assume they'll just remember it. Trust me, you won't. And if you don't write it down, you'll be practicing your mistakes. A wrong finger on the right note is a mistake too. I think that now, when you understand how fingering really works, this is especially clear. So really, the very first thing you do with a new piece, before anything else, is take a pencil and write in your fingering, or have your teacher write it in for you. And a small tip, when I write in fingering, I don't mark every finger, only the spots where the thumb is changing position. It saves space and it's easier on the eye. And here is another obvious one, warming up. Scales, chords, the standard patterns. Just 5 minutes a day, and applying them in the music becomes so much easier. That's how you quickly master the passage, like in Chopin's Nocturne in C# minor, for instance. Because that passage is nothing other than a C# minor scale beginning with A instead of C# and ending with a D# instead of C. And here is one more small tip for you. My students always warm up on the key of the most difficult piece they are currently learning. For the Nocturne in C# minor, for example, I'd have them warm up with the C# minor scale. And then that passage comes together in a single day's work, instead of weeks so many pianists read. I have the whole series about scales, chords and warm-ups on my YouTube channel. Take a look, there is a lot there about ergonomics of the hand. So today we've gone through the key principles that I hope will change the way you see fingering. It's no longer just a set of confusing finger numbers that aren't worth your attention. You've seen that through fingering, you can achieve both musical and technical goals and learn your pieces far more effectively. If this video was helpful to you, the best way to say thank you for what I share is to leave a like and a comment. And if you'd like to work together with me, a small reminder, the link to book a private consultation is in the description box below. So see you in my next videos. Bye.